Uganda had elections yesterday, which was 15th of January. Yoweri Museveni has been in office for a very long time.
Yeah.
Bobby Wine, it is his second attempt, and still the elections have been characterized with all kind of like rigging, and the internet was shut down, and all kind of things happened. What is wrong with the African politician? How can we transform, change our political terrain in Africa? You have seen how politics is done here in America. How do we change our political terrain? What's wrong with African politicians?
That's a loaded question, also
Yes.
very important question. I think African politics basically, even post-independence era, has been characterized by certain individuals taking all the power and refusing to step down. Politics is about serving, about providing the public good and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think leaders should respect the will of the people and not sort of rig elections. So I think Uganda specifically, it has been a very long-standing issue, especially with Museveni.
Yeah.
Ugandan politics has been characterized even from independence, when you had a coup with Idi Amin overthrowing Obote and all of that. Uganda has always had this crop of leaders who do not want to relinquish power, and Museveni's case is not unique. So I think him shutting down the internet is sort of like a political strategy to keep the world from knowing what's going
happening
on in Uganda, so that he can rig elections. And I think right now the people of the Ugandan and the world should stand up, because you cannot have one individual who transforms state institutions like his family business and family enterprise. So the will of the people must be respected, democracy must be respected, and if you rule and it's time for you to get out and people do not want you, why not just relinquish power? So I think it's high time. What he's doing to the opposition is really very bad and against democratic norms and human rights principles. Brutalizing the opposition is really very bad. And of course, this is not unique and it's not new. This is how dictators or authoritarian leaders sort of operate in Africa.
Yeah.
They weaponize state institutions, the security, to perpetrate violence on opposition and the citizens and all of that. So I think it's pretty very bad. And I think there's change. There needs to be change. Especially in the region and broadly in African politics.
Wow, that's a very elaborate one. He knows his stuff. When it comes to politics, he is a gem. He is a guru in that space. But we cannot talk about Uganda without moving to Tanzania. You know what happened there with the recent elections, where a lot of people were actually killed and all those kind of things. Many have condemned it. You being a political analyst and a political science person, what do you have to also say about that? And especially considering the fact that the person is a woman, and we didn't expect that thing to be happening in Tanzania.
Yeah, so Tanzania too is also a very interesting case. I think the current president she
Was
took
the
over.
vice.
She took over. She was the vice. She took over when the president died
Yeah.
and all of that. And people expected that there's going to be, there's this sort of debate that it's high time that we give women opportunity to lead. People argue that women can do better.
Yeah.
I think she's not only the first president in Africa, but the president of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, was the first woman president. So it brought a new dawn of women leadership in African politics, because it has always been the trend of men leading and becoming presidents.
Yeah.
So expectations were high when she came as president, because people thought that, yes, she's a woman and she's going to be leading quite well. But, sometimes politics can be so intoxicating rather. And people never expected how things are going to turn out with her sort of, doing all of this stuff to sort of try to rig elections and stay in power. So I think it's a very sad moment for Africa, basically. I think we need a rebirth and renaissance of our politics, whereby presidential term limits are respected, the will of the people, democracy is respected, and so let democratic governance take place and not try to overturn the will of the people.
Yeah. Talking about term limit, you've seen what is happening also in Ivory Coast, where the president is actually on his third term and he still doesn't want to relinquish power. Terms in office, term limit in office. In my country, Ghana, it has been talked about several times that the current president, John Mahama, should go for a third term. The president himself has said no, he will not go. Some of his party people are still championing that he needs to go for third term. What do you have to say generally about third term? Because it's a predominant issue in Africa where people don't want to respect term limits when they come into office. They change the constitution. You've seen what is also happening in Benin, where the president is also trying to change the constitution so that he could run again and all those kind of things happening. What can we do to actually reduce this term limit that people keep changing? Because that is always the problem. The oppositions are always not happy, and then it creates all kinds of problems in Africa.
Yes, so that's an interesting question. So term limits in African politics, it's a big issue. I know people when they come to power, especially leaders, when they come to power, the first thing they need to do, or the first thing they do is they change the term limits, right? They change the constitution, and I think that's really not good. In political science, there's a concept called constitutional coup, because you're changing the presidential term limit to consolidate yourself in power
and make it look like democratic.
Yes. So, for example, in my country, the present constitution, there's no presidential term limit. So that means the president can keep running as long as people vote for him. So when he came,
I was going to come to your own backyard about Yaya Jammeh.
Yaya Jammeh, yes.
You saw what happened in 2016,
Yeah.
Adama Barrow, they having those back and forth and all this kind of thing, and then at the point, Yaya Jammeh had to run away.
Yes.
It's worrying.
Yes. So Gambia's case, when we gained independence in 1965, we were a democracy under former President Jawara, who was regarded as a very democratic leader. And in fact, Gambia was the only country with Botswana and Senegal were the only multi-party democracies in 1960s after independence. And while other countries were one-party state or military regimes. So in 1994, we had a military coup d'etat. Yaya Jammeh overthrew the government of Jawara. So Jammeh came to power in 1994, and he governed and ruled. He first of all changed the constitution and changed a lot of provisions in the constitution.
Yeah.
And he ruled from 1994 to 2016. That's over like 22 years.
Yes.
He was ruling. And so under his regime, there's been a lot of human rights violations.
Yeah.
He killed a lot of people, arbitrary arrest, detention, torture, you name it. So
you remember the 40 West African nationals
migrants were killed under his regime. So it was really very troubling. And in 2016, Gambians were fed up.
Yeah.
They were tired about his regime, and they needed new leadership. And they voted him out of office in 2016. And we had a coalition government. 7, 8 two political parties came together to overthrow Jammeh and all of that. So, and Barrow was the flag bearer of the coalition party. And when he won in 2016 and sworn in 2017, he promised a lot of reforms. It was a transitional government, right? So he promised a lot of reforms to reform the constitution, but also the security, because sometimes these dictators weaponize security institutions.
Yeah.
And so he promised security reforms so that he modernized the security and professionalized them so that they operate in accordance with modern human rights norms and values. So the constitution, security sector reform, and the transitional justice, whereby we address legacies of past human rights violations by giving reparations and all of that. So, so when Barrow came in, he established a Constitutional Review Commission to look at the Constitution and some of these clauses that were changed by Jammeh. And the Constitutional Review Commission did their work, and they came up with a new constitution that aligns with modern human rights democratic principles. But the constitution went to parliament, and it failed. Why? Because the new constitution had presidential term limit, and Barrow did not want that. So the National Assembly, members of the parliamentarians who were part of his party did not like that.
Okay. And you see, that is always what they try to do. Even if the citizens want it, get it drafted, it will never get the parliamentary approval. And then we are just left in the hanging. I'm still talking to Andrew. We are having a bit more conversation about politics in Africa and everything. And as student leaders from our various countries, we feel like we also need to talk about some of the things happening in our continent or happening on our continent when it comes to politics and current affairs and all those kind of things. So it's a wonderful time with myself and Andrew here. We're also sharing our views on some political happenings. We'll come to Nigeria, or we'll go to Nigeria and talk about what Tinubu and then the Nigerian administration is doing, because you see a lot of people being killed over there, and even President Trump has also commented about that they should do something about it. So I'm still here with Andrew, and we are having an interesting conversation. He is a political science student. He is a political scientist. He knows the way we behave politically. So he's sharing some insight with us.